74 years. That's the age gap between Cameroon's president and the average Cameroonian. At 92, he's a lifetime older than half of Cameroon's population. As outrageous as that might seem, the rest of Africa isn't too different. There are 6 other African countries whose leaders are 80 years and older, 10 more with leaders between 70 and 80 years old, and approximately 20 with leaders between 60 and 70 years old. Yet, these are the leaders shaping the future of Africa's youthful population, of which more than half is under the age of 25. The irony of a continent with the youngest population being predominantly ruled by people past retirement age in their respective countries is what we are dissecting on Visualized.
August 3rd, 1979. In Equatorial Guinea, a 37-year-old lieutenant colonel ousted his uncle in a bloody coup d'etat, ushering in what would be a short-lived hope for a new era of constitutional rule in Equatorial Guinea. Though the illusion of a democratic reform was created through the introduction of a new constitution in 1982, the reality is that for 46 years, Equatorial Guinea has not seen a change in leadership, as the then 37-year-old soldier is now the country's 83-year-old president. About 2,400 kilometers away, a similar situation exists in Uganda, where its 81-year-old president has been in power since 1986. Controversially, an 83-year-old Ivorian president has been elected for a 4th term in office, while Congo-Brazzaville's 81-year-old leader has been president since 1997. And in Zimbabwe, their current 82-year-old president succeeded a 93-year-old one. Shocking, isn't it? Now here's the case that the median age of the African population is stated by many sources to be 19 years, making Africa the youngest continent. On the other hand, we calculated the median age of African presidents to be 65 years. The glaring questions become apparent. How is it that the continent with the most young people in the world is governed by the elderly? And what does this spell for the continent's future?
With many African countries gaining independence in the mid-20th century, leaders who rose at the time were revered and respected for their efforts in the attainment of independence and stability. Given their founding father status, many held on to power. And even when some were ousted in coups, the new leaders continued in the same vein. This, coupled with a perceived wisdom that comes with age in many African cultures, has perpetuated the normalization of elderly rule in many African countries. Now, while many young people do not disagree with the elderly being experienced and wise, there is the concern of how the old folks are unable to keep up with the fast pace of this new age. Think of it as modern tech companies being run by CEOs who still use Nokia 3310 devices. And that's the problem. When the same captain stays at the helm for decades, it's like an old tree blocking all the sunlight, preventing the young saplings underneath from going tall. Imagine trying to climb a greasy pole. You simply can't get a grip. That's how trying to enter leadership positions is for countless young people in Africa. They face numerous hurdles, including structural, economic, systemic, and even cultural ones. Structurally, in some African countries, there are high age limits for political office. In Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, to be president, one needs to be at least 40 years old, a policy that locks out many youth. Pleasantly, many African countries, Nigeria included, have lowered the minimum age to 35, with some further down at 30 years. However, patronage systems have made all but these reforms ineffective as they favor already established individuals who control party nominations and resources, making it nearly impossible for young outsiders to compete. Then come the economic barriers. Running for office is cost-intensive, the kind of cost-intensive most African youth can't afford. With youth unemployment being high across all of Africa, young people simply do not have the funds for political campaigns. Again, with their gerontocratic traditions, young people are often labeled as inexperienced or impulsive, hence being unfit for leadership. Young people face widespread intimidation and discrimination from the elderly when they decide to take up leadership roles, especially political ones like running for office. This has led to distrust in leaders and institutions by many African youth, which in turn has heightened political apathy among them. The lack of interest in political issues by many young Africans results in fewer and less youth-inclusive policies, even for young people who are ready to lead. The system says, wait your turn, a turn that may never come. Just as old age comes with its health problems, so does aging leadership affect the development of a country. Aging leaders tend to stick with what they know, often reluctant to adopt new ideas or to reform policies. Countries like Zimbabwe, which had an old long-serving president, have experienced some of the most serious economic challenges that can be linked to policy. Whether one is for or against Zimbabwe's land reform program, the resultant food shortage, hyperinflation, and reliance on aid cannot be denied. Economic woes that might have been considerably mitigated if younger leadership with fresh new ideas had been elected earlier. Older leaders are likely to overspend on a sector and leave others underdeveloped, as seen in Equatorial Guinea under its 83-year-old president, where oil dependency persists despite calls for green transitions limiting sustainable development. Investment in tech, education, the digital economy, and renewable energy tends to be overlooked. Aging leadership creates a conducive environment for corruption, from reserving government positions to family members, forced constitutional amendments, persecution of opponents, electoral manipulation. The allegations of corruption associated with old, long-serving leaders are endless. For instance, actions such as Equatorial Guinea's leader appointing his son as vice president and living lavishly make it difficult to justify how Equatorial Guinea has a high per capita income from oil, yet ranks poorly in development indices, such as a lack of clean water for citizens and high infant mortality rates. A similar situation happened in Angola, where nepotism and embezzlement by a gerontocratic government had left 2/3 of the population in poverty, even though Angola is resource-rich. In Uganda, where the chief of defense forces is the son of an 80-year-old president, it becomes easier to discourage opposition and suppress dissent. There have been multiple cases when opponents have been imprisoned and treated unfairly. Situations like these fuel frustration among the youth, leading to brain drain as educated youth flee. These cases highlight how aging leaders' extended tenures often lead to institutionalized corruption and repression to sustain power, ultimately hindering economic growth and democratic progress. Not all of Africa's youth is tolerating the status quo. Gradually, a wave of displeasure is sweeping across Africa, where young people are mobilizing for change. Protests against Côte d'Ivoire's 83-year-old president who seeks another term. Senegal's youth movement that propelled the 45-year-old president into office. Youth-led protests in Sudan that ended a 30-year rule. Nigerian youth advocating for the Not Too Young to Run bill to be passed into law. And the strong pushback from Uganda's youth opposition leader are some of the ways young people are fighting against outdated power. Social media platforms like X and TikTok have given young people a massive platform to voice their concerns about injustice, corruption, and a lack of accountability from African governments. Success is in one country, such as Kenyan youth demonstrations leading to the repeal of an unjust finance bill in 2024, inspires young people in other countries to do similarly, and in time, things change for the better. Is young leadership the solution to Africa's problems? Not entirely, but doesn't Africa's young majority being at the helm of affairs sound like a much better way to manage the continent, as opposed to the stagnation and missed opportunities being experienced under elderly leadership? Should Africa's aged leaders step aside? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Visualize to see more impactful videos like this made by young Africans. You may support our work by scanning this QR code or visiting the link in the description.